One of the things I want to talk about today was your latest big bill, which looks like it's going to have some traction in both houses of Congress, the National Prescribed Fire Act of 2021. We have recently seen a number of small wildfires break out here in this area of your district. So it seems timely. Talk about the act and what you want it to accomplish.
I'm very excited about this. I've spent the past, 2.5 years, as long as I've been in Congress, meeting with firefighters, going to sites that have had wildfires. We all have this memory of what happens now every summer, and it's getting worse and worse. This summer is shaping up to be a bad one, where we have these catastrophic wildfires, and so much of, at least part of the cause, is that our forests have not been managed. We haven't let any natural burns happen for over 100 years, and so they're crowded, there's underbrush, which just makes for an incredibly hot, destructive fire. So it is widely recognized that one of the ways to deal with that is to thin the forests. And some of that's mechanical, but a lot of that is controlled burns. And you do that at a time when you're not at risk for having a catastrophic fire. And so this bill just finally puts real money behind it. An account, $300 million, minimum amounts that have to have controlled burns to really take this on, starting with areas, in the WUI, areas like here, where you have people and nature close together, and that puts our forests and our people at risk.
In the wildland-urban interface.
Yes. See, I've been here for a while. The WUI, Wildland-Urban Interface.
Acronyms can catch up with you after a while, but it's basically the place where cities meet forests, cities meet wildland.
Right. So there's an example, for example, in Kittitas County, Roslyn. They have a big program going on. They're just right in the middle of forest, sitting duck, so to speak. And so they are taking on their own project to thin those forests mechanically and with controlled burns.
It's a real challenge, for sure.
Really important.
Fire treatment needs to happen in the springtime, and a lot of people sometimes look up, see a plume from a controlled burn, and they get a little bit alarmed. Do you feel like we can overcome some of that resistance, and people will someday come to understand springtime is burn time, so we don't have summertime fire time?
That's exactly right. It's all about education, right? That the firefighters tell me that once they start doing this, they will run into people on the street that say, hey, it's a beautiful day. Why isn't there any smoke in the air? Because yes, the idea is do it when you can control it. And that's all about public education. Protecting people with asthma, for example. They need to know when it's coming and why, and ultimately it is a huge win.
This would also increase the Forest Service acres that are treated by the Forest Service and the Department of Interior. We mentioned that only about 3 million acres a year get treated right now by those agencies. So is there a target for what they should be required to treat if the bill becomes law?
There is a minimum on how much should be treated. That is more difficult to achieve in mountainous areas than in flat areas. But yes, there are minimums, there are incentives for states to get involved, and this also provides funding for some of the places where national forest, state forest, private forest overlap, so that we don't have hard lines where there's contiguous forest.
I mentioned that it looked like the bill had some traction in both houses, and that's because a companion bill was introduced in the Senate, which also has some support from some pretty key senators. So can you talk about that aspect of it?
That's right. Well, it always bodes well when you have a strong bill in the Senate and the House, and when it has bipartisan support. So Representative Simpson from Idaho is on this bill with me. In the House, it has support from our senators, also from Dan Feinstein. And so when you take both parties in both houses, it puts a lot of momentum behind it. And certainly, as wildfires approach, the whole country has seen the West up in smoke. This should get attention, and I think it should pass.
And Senator Manchin, I think you said, was on board, and he's
That's
proven
right.
to be one of the key senators on any vote in the Senate.
He has all the power right now, doesn't he?
It seems that way. And that led me to another question about some of the measures that have moved through the House and gone to the Senate. Some very popular measures have gone through the House, wound up in the Senate, come down to a deadline vote or a last-minute vote, and been turned down by maneuvers within the Senate itself. So, for instance, the For the People Act, which you supported, would expand the voting franchise and put some controls on partisan redistricting. So people who support these bills but then see them go to the Senate and really get churned around, what can they be doing? Knowing that you're the House member, what should they be doing to try and get some motion in the Senate?
So this is a question that is on all of our minds right now, which is, do you wait until you know that you have the votes for something to bring it up for a vote? Or do you just say, this is so important. It is so important to make it easier for people to vote. It is so important to make sure we don't have foreign interference in our elections. It is so important to get big dark money out of our politics so that we have a system of democracy that is by the people and for the people. Do you wait until you can count the votes and get 10 Republican votes, or do you just bring it up and say, we're going to put you on record? Do you support voting rights or do you not? And I think personally, I think it's really important to make people decide.
And it's something that they then have to answer for in the future. In 2020, you voted this way. In 2021, you're voting this way. Why is that?
And of course, usually it's politics. But I do think it is important for people to know, for the people here in Chelan County to know that, basically what we're trying to do is get everywhere in the country caught up with Washington State. We have a great voting system here. You get your ballot by mail. You have 3 weeks to fill it out. You can sit and study and fill out your ballot at the same time. Why shouldn't you have that ability everywhere in the country?
Talking about bipartisanship and talking about measures that move from the House to the Senate, but then seem to get stymied. The investigation into January 6th. There was a call for a commission, an independent commission, that went through the House, passed with your vote, failed in the Senate. Is there a method by which the House could put forward its own investigation rather than relying on a commission?
So let me, Jefferson, just take a quick step back, because I think there's a lot of misinformation about this particular commission. First of all, when it passed the House, it passed with big bipartisan support. We got 35 Republicans to come on board despite a push to not vote for it. Second, I want people to understand that this bipartisan commission is it's a funny name for it, because Democrats would pick 5 people, Republicans would pick 5 people, but there would be no politicians on that special commission. And it would be modeled after the 9/11 commission. And the idea is to bring in law enforcement and military, people to really look at this and say, what went wrong that we could have an insurrection, a riot at the Capitol, that people could be breaking windows and threatening the lives of senators and members of Congress and the vice president? And how can we make sure that never happens again? Because I'll tell you, it was not a normal day. So then your question, I know I'm going on for a little bit here. So your question is, should we just do it in the House? The bill that the Senate, that the Republicans in the Senate just voted down, that's what I was just talking about. No politicians, not a partisan thing. I would like it to keep it out of the political realm, because I think we all deserve to know what happened and why, to prevent it in the future, because it was really a travesty and very scary for a person who was there.
Do you want to talk about your experiences of that day? Because I don't think we've really heard your account, truthfully.
I guess one of the things that I think about from that day is that as we were driving in the morning, we were sort of jesting about how we kept hearing on the news that special security had been put in place and that members of Congress were given special instructions. And I was like, did you guys get special instructions? Because all I was told was to drive in before 9 and not go outside. And then somebody said, I heard that people have maps of the tunnels. And so we were all on high alert. I mean, it was very obvious to us, and if it was obvious to us, it really should have been obvious to law enforcement that bad things were potentially going to happen that day. I specifically stayed in my office, COVID times and safety issues, and we kept getting alerts. A suspicious package was found. Evacuate this other building. Where should you go? If you're going to go anywhere, use the tunnels, stay inside. Which is exactly where it would have been dangerous to be. And so, eventually the directive came to close all blinds, turn off the lights, stay silent. And there were a lot of hours of staying silent while we just all wondered, where's the National Guard? Where are the helicopters? Like, how is it that people are breaking into the Capitol? And for my colleagues who were on the floor, I mean, they are still dealing with trauma. For the police officers, the Capitol Police, who just saw this bill voted down that would have looked into why they were put at risk, why they didn't have riot gear, why they were not equipped to deal with this. Like, that's a real disservice to them. They're dealing with their own trauma, and many of them are leaving, and a couple have committed suicide. Like, this is a really big deal that should not be swept under the rug and that we cannot allow to happen again.
And that's the reason behind the push for an independent inquiry.
Absolutely.
Now, the House can make an inquiry. The question is whether that's then colored by perceptions of politics or actual politics.
It certainly will be presented that way. And I'll tell you, I heard a really clever idea, which was that perhaps we could have an executive order and give George W. Bush and Barack Obama the ability to choose 5 experts, non-political experts, again, military, law enforcement, experts in extremism, to do their own investigation, to keep it out of the House, to keep it out of the Senate, but to get to the truth, because what we need is the truth, and we need to make sure that half of the country does not think that this was a partisan witch hunt, which is the way it is being cast. And that is very dangerous for our country and very dangerous for our Capitol and very dangerous for the police officers who look after us and try to keep us in the Capitol safe.
You and I talked last week about the earmark process, and this has been reintroduced to Congress after an absence of a couple of years for $892 million in transportation and infrastructure spending, plus a little bit more than $10 million for community projects like broadband fiber build out. There's food banks in there, there's health clinics, there's senior services that are all included in your request. So what's the likelihood of all this coming through for the 8th District? Or is it too soon to say? Or is there a perspective that you don't have, not having gone through this process before?
You know, I've never gone through this process before of a member of Congress working with leaders in the district to decide where money should go. Half of Congress has not existed, so we had to really be trained up on how to do this. I worked really hard to have transparency and an independent advisory board to help me make decisions. And I think we have some great projects in there. How much will be covered, I don't know. But I'll tell you, it's my job to go to bat for the 8th District. And I want all these projects to get funded. I'm also a realist, but you know, the way I look at it, before decisions were made in Washington, D.C. by bureaucrats who don't know the 8th District. Here, you know, if the money's going to be spent either way, I get to work with community groups, with mayors, to look at what should have the highest importance and put those forward. And the people on the ground know that best.
When might we know the outcome? It will have to be a big spending bill that passes?
I'm going to have to say an I don't know on that one. We just got the budget. Now I think several months of work have to go through to figure out how that all comes in. So I'll continue to sit with both fingers and all toes crossed.
We'll be watching for sure. We're only able to talk in person, you and I, Congresswoman, because of the advent of the COVID-19 vaccines. And you're also making several in-person visits around the district this week, which you haven't been able to do for some time during the pandemic. I know you actually visited in person, but with restrictions.
Right.
So this vaccine is making progress and making life normalize a bit, but there's still a lot of hesitancy out there. I saw that a group of parents recently was angry with the Lake Chelan School District over their hosting of a vaccine clinic on school grounds. So how do we counteract this kind of thing since we're seeing so many good outcomes with vaccination in the public?
Right. So first of all, let me just say it is a miracle that we have several highly effective vaccines and that we had them less than a year from when this disease hit the United States. So first, a huge thank you and admiration to the scientists and researchers and to the people who stepped up as volunteers. You know, I understand vaccine hesitancy. This is the world I live in as a pediatrician. And for the most part, I think we tend to lump hesitancy and anti-vaxxer into the same category, and they're not. I mean, this is just people who just kind of think, you know, I don't know, maybe the research was too fast, or I don't know, maybe I just don't want to be the first, or I don't know, kids don't seem to get all that sick, you know, what's the risk-benefit calculation? And those are questions that all have great answers. And so I am very confident that conversations between parents and their pediatrician, between people and their family doctor who they trust, who they have relationships with, is going to get far more people on board. And we're moving right now from these mass vaccination centers to pharmacies and doctors' offices. And I think we're going to see a big change there.
When it's an option that's put in front of you like a flu vaccine, or when it's an option that's there for your child before starting school, it might become more of a normalized thing.
Sure, when your pediatrician says, okay, so Johnny's due for Tdap, WENATCHEE, and HPV, and a COVID vaccine. We go down all of them, parents ask questions, pediatrician answers, yes, it is so worth getting your child vaccinated. And can I just say, as a pediatrician, kids have milder symptoms than adults. Kids can get very sick. Hundreds have died. I'm not being alarmist, I'm just saying, don't think that kids are immune from this disease. And we're still finding out about this bat disease, and we're still learning about long COVID, which does seem to also affect children. We know these vaccines, millions of them, hundreds of millions of them have been given. We know they're safe. So get your children vaccinated. It will mean they can go to school, hopefully without masks next year. It'll mean they can have lunch with their friends. It means they can do sleepovers. They can go to summer camp. These are a big deal for kids who have spent a year, many of them, learning remotely. They want normalcy. This is how you get there.
Have you heard anything about a time frame for when the under 12s might be able to receive a vaccination?
I have, and the time frame it's speeding up. We first thought, I have a 12-year-old, he got his first vaccine 2 weeks ago, he's getting his next one this Saturday. First we had heard that for them, we might get it in before September. Now it sounds like the 5 to 11s we may be able to get before school starts in September, but they're looking for the youngest, like the 6-month to 5-year-olds, probably looking at early 2022. So we've still got a while. We still need to protect our kids.
It's worth doing.
Yep, absolutely.
Any final thoughts from you today, Congresswoman?
Just that I am delighted to be here. I love being here in Chelan County. I had a fantastic day yesterday. It was in Chelan and in Manson. Had a wonderful celebration, Memorial Day with the community there, and an opportunity to thank veterans and to have what we call a pinning ceremony with Vietnam vets. And they're one of my favorite parts of being a member of Congress, to just really personally be able to thank veterans who served, who never got an appropriate thank you and welcome home. And they're important and emotional events, and we got to do that yesterday.